and Sherry has entrusted me with being MC for this morning. So what we'll do, we're just going to start off with a word of prayer and then we'll get going today. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much for the opportunity today to educate others about abuse, to talk about healthy relationships. I pray a blessing over Peter and Claire and Sherry as they speak, that it might touch our hearts and that we would learn from these sessions, and also be with those who are unable to be here, Lord. May it all be a blessing to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have two sessions. So one session is going to be over red flags in dating relationships, and then the other session is going to be healthy relationships, and we'll have a break in between. You might be asking, what is Awaken? It is a nonprofit organization, and the purpose is to educate people about abuse. So I'm going to be introducing your first two speakers, which are Peter and Claire Roise. They are a part of the Awaken team and are advocates for those in destructive situations. So Peter works full-time for his own company, PR Appearances, and they've been married 17 years, which I think is fabulous. They have 6 children that they homeschool, and they've now entered into the world of advocating for people in hard relationships. Peter operates a few family businesses in marketing and digital media production, and Claire uses the social media to talk about abuse. You can follow her at Claire Roise Advocacy on Facebook. So let's welcome these two this morning.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you for your patience as we got our technical side of things going this morning. I'm doing a little bit of both, and so pulling it all together. There's a lot of buttons even for me, which says a lot. So we're going to talk about red flags in dating, and I'm going to try to manage the microphone well here. I think this is an important thing. I think we can go to the next slide. What is a red flag? There we go. Okay, so I want to talk just for a minute about what red flags are. I want you to think even in your mind about what that image means. We use the phrase sometimes without thinking about it. It's, red is kind of an eye-catching color. A flag is a symbol. This is something that's designed to make you stop and pay attention. And so that's really what we want you to do, is stop and pay attention. If you see some of these things in a relationship, it should be something that you're interested in. Take some time to figure it out. It's a warning. That's one thing to say, is it's a warning. Stop and pay attention. But it isn't a proof. Just because you have one or a number of these things in a relationship doesn't mean necessarily that you have a destructive relationship. At the same time, it is the kind of thing that you don't want to ignore. If you do, you might find yourself down the road going, I wish I had noticed. I wish I had noticed X, whatever it is. I wish I had noticed that he was pulling me away from my family, or she was, really didn't want me to be close to my family. Also, I'm going to say that it's a behavior that's worth noticing and paying attention to. And that's another point to make, is that these are behaviors. So the red flag comes from a behavior that's in the relationship, usually from your partner, but you could even recognize it yourself potentially. It's worth paying attention from that standpoint as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. Red flags in dating.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just explain. We thought it would be good for us to tag team on this. We've never really tried this before, so it could be interesting. We discovered we have very different presenting styles as we were practicing this week. But we thought it could be good to give both a guy's perspective and a girl's perspective on this. It's a couple different sides of the issue. So we're just going to kind of bat it back and forth between us and see how it goes. And in a minute, we're going to show you an actual list of red flag behaviors. We can't really cover everything in one short talk, but in trying to learn to identify red flags, there's a couple of pieces that we thought would be really helpful to just help you kind of sort them out. First, look at the effect of a behavior. All the things that we do have effects on other people. And so notice what the effect of the behavior is on you immediately. There will be one. That'll help you know whether it's harmful or not.
And we'll talk about this more, but it's also an overtime effect. So
Right, yeah.
usually we're looking at a big picture context.
Right, yeah. And then the other thing is, and you may see that you change how you behave in the relationship. You may see that one of the effects is that your partner gains room to misbehave a little more freely in the future. That's something that would be an effect to notice. And the second thing is that it's good to look at why do we overlook these things, because we actually really do. We tend to go along with them, we tend to overlook them, kind of shuffle them under the rug, say it's no big deal. And there's all sorts of reasons why we might do that. Sometimes we were socialized in such a way that we just grew up with an idea that it's not okay, or that it's not a problem for someone to treat us disrespectfully. Sometimes there is a church environment involved. It encourages us to believe that we just don't have any rights. It's better to be nice. It's better to be a kind person than it is to make a big deal out of things. So those are some of the reasons. Whatever the reasons are, we need to just identify them and work on breaking those patterns of cooperation with bad behavior.
All right, excellent. Okay, so here are 4 broad categories of red flags that you can see. What does this behavior cause? So again, that first step of evaluation or investigation into the red flag to see, hey, is this a serious issue that I need to look into, that I need to do something about, is to categorize, understand what it's doing to you. And so these are categories that can help you understand what it might be doing to you and things that are especially dangerous. So first of all, are these things that pull you away from your family and friends? You need to be connected to your network. You need to have that accountability in your life. And so if there's an isolating behavior, something that pulls you away from your family and friends, that's something that should definitely be a concern to you, and you should investigate further, make sure that you actually are staying connected to other people. Also, are there things there that make you question your judgment or abilities? I think this is really crucial, and it's an interesting one. We'll talk about in specific instances in a little bit. You're going to see how this plays out. But anything that starts to make you less capable, less able to interact in the world is something you should be worried about. And that can happen from a couple different angles. It can happen from an angle where somebody takes care of everything for you, or it can also come from an angle of people really tearing you down and making you feel dumb. You know, if you feel dumb over and over again, or you feel like your judgment isn't good, that's something you should definitely investigate. Things that help others avoid responsibility. Claire already alluded to this a second ago, and they create space for bad behavior. This would be something like somebody telling you very early on in a relationship, I have an anger problem, or I struggle with, my past is really damaging to me, and I can't cope with X, whatever it is, okay? And there's some things there that are real. This is a place to mention that sometimes what looks like a red flag is a reality. It can be either way. But we have to look at it closer, especially if that space for bad behavior doesn't get smaller and it's kind of protected. That's something to really look out for. Things that create or increase power imbalance. And that's similar to your judgment, but it's also one of those things where your judgment is decreased, but it's also, if you come into a relationship and there's an expectation that he gets to do certain things and you don't, or she gets to do certain things and you don't, and that's permanent and it's not changeable and it's not related to any other factors in the relationship, that should be a warning sign.
All right, so we will be giving you a list. We'll talk through a list, which will be kind of fun. Before we do, this is a good time to probably mention we've got a number. Yes, we have a number up on the screen. So if you think of red flag behaviors that have cropped up that you've noticed, or if you have a question about a behavior that you wonder if it might be concerning, go ahead and text it to us just throughout the talk. Anytime is a good time. And then we will try to make time for that in Q&A to talk about those. Also, as we talk through our list, we'll be just interchangeably using him and her. Doesn't really matter. These go both directions. Guys do them, girls do them. Some level we all do them now and then. Really the point is just see if you can plug it into your own situation and find a fit. All right, so first one is all his exes are crazy. All of them, totally crazy. Or any variation on this. It could sound a lot like just blaming other people. A lot of blame for other people, a lot of dismissing other people. This is something that I wanted to touch on why we might accept it, or why we might go along with this piece. I think for me, I think I would kind of like it if all his exes were crazy, because that would mean that I am far superior. That's a story that I'm actually, I like that one. So, just let that one slip by. We like that idea. We want to be the special one, the superior one, and so we let it go.
I had so many exes. Okay, so how about too much, too fast, flooding with charm, attention, compliments, asking for exclusivity too soon. So anytime you have a really fast-moving relationship, you should be wary of it. It's actually an interesting behavior, red flag behavior, that actually kind of almost fits all the categories. Because when somebody is giving you lots of attention and a relationship is moving fast, it's exciting. You're kind of sucked into this vortex of this other person, this other relationship. And when you do that, I think you are definitely pulled away from your community. And probably your community tends to say, hey, I wonder about, and that's the moment where you kind of, there's a test of loyalty, and it's exciting, you want to go with it. So I think that's why we accept it. Also, we end up having our judgment sort of confused just because we're moving so fast. It's hard to know what's real. And then there's room for bad behavior again because of the speed. And I would say, things, there's a power balance. You're usually following somebody else is leading in that direction. You can go with it pretty well yourself too, though. So this is one that kind of, it's mostly the excitement of it that I think sweeps us up. It's excitement of the person, whatever. And it kind of has all of the characteristics. So it's just really, it's not that it never works out to have a fast relationship, but it's just, it's a pretty big red flag, which is why a lot of people recognize this. We'll probably find your mom going, I wonder how you. So.
Always listen to your mom. All right, guilt. Guilt is a bad sign. Guilt for spending time with your friends and family. That might sound more like, I don't like your friends and family, but it could also sound like your family doesn't like me. I don't really like hanging out with them. They don't get us. I don't think that they like me. They don't like us. It could sound like, you have to hang out with your friends again. Didn't you just hang out with them last week? A little bit of guilt for going with somebody besides me. We accept that, I think, because it makes us feel loved and needed and special. It's an easy jump to think, well, he just loves me so much, he needs me all the time. The next one is teasing that pushes past your comfort zone. And that can be verbal or it can be physical. It can be anything from inappropriate humor that makes you feel uncomfortable to tickling, not stopping when asked, poking, pushing type stuff that is then treated like you're being too oversensitive if you want to react to it. That guilt that comes afterwards is something to notice. If you react to something and you hear, I was just teasing, you're making such a big deal out of something, but what's the matter with you? That you should definitely notice, because the cumulative effect of all of that is to wear down your judgment. You don't know really what's normal and acceptable anymore, and if you put up with that, it creates a power imbalance because you've now said, okay, I will put up with this, and that creates space the next time for more of the same. And so the effect of the behaviors, they accumulate over time. You're not going to see it really loud and clear in just any one instance, but it's kind of like a tightening ratchet. You go along with this one, and then it gets a little worse, and you go along with that one, and it gets a little worse. So over time, you will see it more.
All right, so somebody who never really apologizes or backs down, who always has to be right. This is an interesting one. I think this is especially pertinent for church environments. This isn't, we don't typically like people who are overpowering like that in general, but there's a couple things within churches that I think make this a problem that happens here more often. One is that there's an overall culture that says that we don't deserve anything, that everything we get is a gift, everything's grace. And so that environment of grace means that we are humble, right? So you believe, oh, well, somebody's being kind of rude to me, but I should just be humble, I should be nice. So that kind of approach, I think, is sort of a baseline place that makes some of that behavior more acceptable, or it can last longer in a church where you accept stuff like that. You don't just kind of leave people in the lurch. You're supposed to be caring. So that's the first piece. And then the other thing, and this one has a little bit more of a male-female dynamic on this red flag, I would say for sure, where there's an expectation that women are supposed to support men, they're supposed to follow, men are supposed to lead. And if that kind of stuff is taught along with the other about being humble and caring and so on and so forth, you can really have a situation where you'll put up with this for way longer than you should, and the guy is able to get away with being domineering and never backing down, never saying sorry, much longer than is really healthy. And so this is a red flag that's kind of specific to churches, and it's definitely worth looking into because it could be a real problem. Oh, I should say something about that too, actually. It does wear away your sense of being able to have an opinion. So if you, every time you're always deferring, then your judgment is worn away, and you're, the person is diminished over time. It just really does happen.
All right, controlling jealousy or treating you like a fix-it project. It can sound like, don't go there, don't wear that, don't talk so loud, don't talk so flirtatiously, don't laugh so loud, don't hang out with that person. Maybe it looks like your partner not allowing for alone time or getting really paranoid whenever you're apart. And the narrative is often, I'm only doing this because I love you so much, I don't want other guys to bother you. A guy might do that to a girl, don't wear that, I don't want other guys to bother you because you're wearing something that's going to attract attention. Yeah, I want what's best for you. I'm only trying to help. I want what's best for us in our relationship. And we go along with that again, like so many others, because, it makes us feel loved and cared about when people are trying to give us attention to help us with our problems. Also, when a friend asks us for something, a friend that we are fond of, we really want to give it to them. We don't want to withhold that. So, but like all the others, it causes, over time, it causes us to question our judgment. If over and over and over again you experience that something you thought was okay, he or she believes is a really bad idea, well, eventually you're going to have to go with your judgment or his or hers. And that will subtly undermine your self-confidence and your strength and the mutuality in the relationship.
All right, and quickly about privacy. So this leads to a double standard, power imbalance kind of situation. And we've already talked about situations that are like this. Sometimes, it'll be him or her checking up on you, and when that's going on, it's because they love you so much. But when they check up on, see if I can get this right. When you check up on them, then it's you're so nosy, you're so nagging, whatever. There's a double standard here. So particularly about privacy is something that. They can show up in a double standard like that, but sometimes it doesn't even need to do that. I mean, it is a norm for relationships that are healthy, that eventually there should be transparency and there should be intimacy, there should be a level of trust between partners. And so when that is either not there or isn't developing over time, that's something that you should be worried about. Now, a little caveat on that. A demand for transparency after a break in trust or a demand for transparency too early is a red flag of its own. So there's a balance to keep in the picture about this. But guarding your phone, like, oh, you can't see what's on my phone, or that kind of thing, that can be a red flag.
All right, so repeatedly bringing up your past failures, that's a red flag. And if you're noticing that your past failures are getting used against you over and over, that's a problem. This is a little tricky to balance, kind of like the privacy one, because abusive people or controlling people often tend to ride both sides of the line. And they want to say that you should forgive and forget instantaneously where I'm concerned, but your past failures, those are a good reason for me to continue riding you. So, that can, you have to have some judgment here. A couple of things that might help. One, serious breaking of trust in the past, like Peter just said, should mean limited trust in the future. If someone has really seriously broken your trust in the past, you need to pay attention to that, and it will mean that you won't necessarily trust them as fully, at least for a while. That's normal, that's right. At the same time, the expectation in any healthy relationship is that issues will get resolved and put to rest. And so, if you are not able to move forward on a basis of mutual trust, maybe consider whether the relationship is even possible to salvage. That's something to think about. Are you guys able to hear me okay when I'm standing right here? That work okay? Okay. A little closer? That's Okay. All right.
So I was just one other thing that I wanted to say on that one is that sometimes it takes the form where it sounds like, your past misbehavior causes me insecurity. And the insecurity then is the space for the bad behavior. And so you kind of get into a couple of different bad categories there where you're tearing down, and you're also creating that space for bad behavior. So, so we've been talking about the flip side of this, where someone is demanding and controlling and smothering, but it can also, wait a minute, where am I here? Oh yeah, where somebody wants to, this is kind of an odd one. It doesn't happen very much. If you have it at all, somebody wants to keep your relationship a secret, something to really be wary of. This is kind of like a really fast relationship. I think most people can understand this is not wise to have a secret relationship. There are sometimes reasons, maybe you're young and you want to keep something from your parents. Not a good idea, very bad idea. Or another situation would be where you have an ex or you have a past relationship, you don't want to hurt somebody. That might be a little bit more understandable. Still not a good idea. In order to have a healthy relationship, you need to be in your community. They need to be able to see you, they need to be able to give you input about what's going on. So when you have a secret relationship, you're isolated from your people, bad situation.
Yes, and that leads quite naturally into any kind of lie. Always a big deal when someone lies. People lie for different reasons. Sometimes they're afraid of you finding out the truth, afraid of what will happen. Sometimes they're actually trying to really control you with lies, but either way, lies are a big deal. And the obvious straightforward effect when someone lies to you is you do not have accurate information, and the way it works is that somebody who has the accurate information in any relationship really has an advantage. They have an edge. If you are lacking accurate information, you are disempowered. That's kind of obvious, stating obvious. Any kind of lying, because of that, creates a power imbalance and causes you to doubt your judgment and abilities. You just don't know what's true or real, in fact. The biggest thing I want to touch on here, though, is that it is hard to be strict about truth-telling in others if we are a little bit fudgy with the truth ourselves. It is absolutely critical to make a radical commitment to truth in our own lives and expect a radical commitment to the truth from others that we're in a relationship with. One little clarification on that is that there is a kind of abuser who uses this kind of exhortation as a good justification for saying really unkind things. And so this is probably stating the obvious, but commitment to truth does not equal unkindness or cruelty.
You don't get to say she's ugly. All right, so pushing for sex and physical intimacy too soon. This kind of runs to the spectrum from, oh yeah, of course, we know this, to you'd be surprised. So a word about the intimacy of all kinds. Building a relationship should be a process of developing knowledge about each other, friendship, trust, commitment, and then emotional and physical intimacy and vulnerability can be built on top of that. If you flip them around, you're really in a dangerous situation, or even if you get ahead of the game on the physical intimacy side of things. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute, but the reality is that a lot of times abusive and controlling people don't really know how to build good relationships. And so physical intimacy kind of stands in as a way to simulate closeness, a way to make it feel comfortable and feel like there's something good going on. And in fact, there isn't a really good connection there. It's masking some of the other problems. So it's a confusing signal, and that's one of the biggest reasons to just avoid it.
Especially early on.
Yeah, it makes sense to have that part of your relationship match the level of commitment that's going on. I think that's the main feature there. All right, so I get to recap. Next slide. Okay, so basically, if the over time effects of your dating relationship are that you're being pulled away from your support network, you're feeling that you're being aware of and capable is on the decline, you don't know what's going on and you're not able to interact with it or control it or even control yourself. You don't have control over the things in your life you're supposed to have control over. your partner is avoiding responsibility and creating space for bad behavior, then you should be, and if there's a power imbalance or if you're feeling, you feel helpless, feeling helpless is a good colloquial way to talk about power imbalance. That's, what does the power imbalance feel like? It feels like I'm trapped, I can't do anything, I don't know if I have any voice in this relationship. If any of those things are going on, then you should, next slide.
Sorry.
You should,
There we go. Single word slide.
there might be some other solutions, but this is a good one.
We thought this was funny anyway, so that's why I made it in there.
All right.
And then, yeah, you can move on from Ryan. So, I can't really get into a flow chart for staying away from problem relationships, problem people who are gonna be controlling. But the 2 tools we've just given you today will actually really go a long way. They're surprisingly effective. The first one, just to go over it again, kind of in a nutshell, resist isolation. If you're being pulled away from the people and the family and the friends who've known you and are stable in your life and have things to say to you, then resist that. Don't go along with that. And wait on physical intimacy until there's a matching level of emotional intimacy and commitment. Depending on what we're talking about, that could be, if there's certain things that are appropriate for engagement. Sex should obviously wait till marriage. But keep your, if you want to scare away people who are controlling in an abusive sort of a way, just eschew the physical intimacy. That will actually be very effective. And awareness itself is a great tool. If you're going to pay attention to the warning signs early instead of late, you will avoid a lot of problems that way.
All right, which brings us to one final point, and that is basically that being able to hear your community or stay close to your community, being able to wait on physical intimacy, and being able to hold a relationship loosely is something that you can that you need to do, and it's only this way that you're going to be able to put on those brakes in a relationship if you need to. And if you're doing that, you're going to take a very different view of what relationships are and how you're supposed to relate to them than most of what our culture is selling. They teach us, the movies and music and entertainment all teach us to idolize romantic relationships. But if you put God first in this important area, then you can actually put the brakes on if you need to. And that's something that I think is really important to point out. So if you're following Him, you'll be happy to follow Him out of a destructive relationship because you know He has something better for you. Whereas if you're not doing that, if you're following our culture's demand for this being your be-all and your end-all, it's going to be almost impossible for you to actually do anything about red flags, even if you see them. So put God first. All right, now we're ready for Q&A. That went pretty well. Got a question?
So, are red flags things that like everybody does, or is it just like not healthy? And like, is it possible to like, is any relationships completely free of them?
Okay, so the question was, are red flags things that everybody does, or is there any relationship that's completely free of red flags? And texting is a great way to get questions to us as well. You can probably do it this way.
Yeah, either way.
Some of the other talks we've given have definitely been of a more sensitive nature, so we want to be sensitive in the texting was something we were pushing towards from that standpoint before. So I don't think that all of these behaviors are in every relationship. I think a lot of them come out of very natural tendencies. It's very much like anything else in bad relationships. It tries to look like normal. And it's normal in a relationship for you to move towards the other person and, in a certain degree, away from your family. So a little bit of movement away from your family, eventually you're going to, and it even says, leave your father and mother and join your wife. So there's a leaving and going. So that's a normal part of a good relationship. But if it's pulling you away in an isolated kind of way, it's also a red flag, and you should be very wary of. So, yeah, I I think the behavior itself usually is imitating something that's good or that we want to have.
I can add to that. We've talked about this before a little bit, that there's a difference between abusive behaviors, which really, they are things that we all do. I know there's times that I have not put his failures to rest, but I'm just like, I want to keep talking about it. I think it's correct to call that an abusive behavior. It's a behavior that I'm using to try to control. But there's a difference between an abusive behavior and a pattern of abusive behaviors. And especially over time, that's why it's so important to pay attention to the effects that they're having on you over time. Are you getting diminished in the relationship? Are you feeling less and less able to address something that you feel is a problem because there's going to be a huge blow up, or you're going to experience the cold shoulder, or if over time the effect is you're getting more and more cramped and hampered and cut off and unable to do anything about it, then that is a sign that this is really a problem. Does that answer the question?
What she said.
Okay, there's another question. Okay, repeat the question.
So the question on this slide up here is, if you notice a red flag, what's the next step? Kind of depends on where you're at. Obviously, we put run up there earlier, and that may be something you want to consider doing. Actually, the very first step, like we said in the talk, is the red flag is a sign you need to look closer. So maybe this question is, you know it's a red flag, you've investigated it, and you realize it's a problem. I'm assuming that's what you've done. In that case, then you have a fairly limited number of options. You can try to find some way to change the situation. If it's you can change yourself, potentially, although understanding that it's really there and it's really a concerning behavior, I question whether you should trust yourself to make that change all by yourself. You need your community. If it's in your partner, then you're talking counseling, you're talking seriously creating accountability, maybe even in the structure of the relationship. So, for instance, if he's trying to pull away from your family and your friends, and you recognize that as a problem, you say, well, we have to move. I either have to end this relationship, or I have to move toward my family and my friends, and you're willing to come with me. And that will be a measure of what exactly is going on. It will show you. Is he really committed to you? Is he really interested in learning this? But be careful, because it's a long-term thing. This is a struggle. This is a big picture context. So you might go with your 4 steps, but then he'll continue to undermine your family in all his interactions with them. And if that's still going on, then you have to recognize that this is a serious problem that needs to be addressed with serious consequences. Probably the ending of the relationship, but at the very least, a recognition of the problem and a commitment on his part to really change it, is what I would say.
Sure, and I would add, I think a good first step is reach out. Go find somebody to talk to. Go get some other eyes on it besides yours, and say, am I seeing this right? Is this really a problem? And maybe even 2 or 3 people, especially if you feel like if you're going to do that, you're going to be in trouble. Do it. Find somebody else to talk to.
Yeah, the less you want to do it, the more you should probably recognize that this is a serious situation. How do you remain, the question says, how do you remain nice but stand up for yourself? How do you remain nice but stand up for yourself? That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know, that must depend on the situation quite a bit. You can't always do both. I think this is going to sound like a broken record, but another person's perspective could be really helpful in that as well. If you have a friend you could talk to and say, okay, this happened, and here's how I reacted, and then I felt like I wasn't being nice. What's the actual truth from your perspective? Was I being really nasty here, or was I just doing the necessary? Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got on the general.
I think related to this is if you're really both cooperatively striving for a healthy relationship, collaboration is going to be essential. You work together, and so as much as possible, speak about what you're doing and in a way that makes it clear that's what you're doing. You can just say it. It's important to say it frequently. Hey, I want to do this for us. You know, I'm paying attention to a red flag, and I still have hope for us. But my hope is not grounded in some pie in the sky idea this will just go away, because I think this is kind of a serious problem. And so if you can do that, and then you can bring in your community not only for perspective, but even for accountability, and everybody can feel like you're for them, then I think you can keep that balance. But it has to be something like that. How do I deal with it if I create a boundary and it upsets them? How do I deal with it if I create a boundary and it upsets them? We'll start with that one, don't you? No? Okay, I feel like I'm channeling you, so that's why I thought maybe. But, it's kind of a comment you made just a minute ago about if you know it's going to upset them, that's a pretty significant red flag itself. When there's a resistance, when you feel a resistance to do something that is for both of your benefit, and you can communicate that clearly, and as long as you're not being nasty, as long as you're not being that mean person, as long as you're not the person that's tearing them down, to bring something serious that you have a concern about should be something that there's room for in a relationship. If that isn't there, then you probably need some other help too.
Yeah, and I might add that, no, I'll wait on.
Okay.
Lost my comment.
Yeah, I think boundary is an important thing to set. Sometimes that word, at least one more thing about that thing, sometimes that word gets thrown around. And it's such a positive experience for everybody. Like I can actually say no, and it's a really powerful thing. It's good. I think it's overwhelmingly a good thing. At the same time, I've heard the word boundary used in circumstances where it means I want to be mean, and they don't like it when I'm mean. If that's what you're saying, don't be mean. Don't be mean. It's not an excuse to be mean.
I thought of what it was. It's also, though, on the other side of it, don't over second guess yourself. Kind of take the moment to do the gut check. What are my desires here? What am I trying to accomplish here? Am I just taking responsibility for myself? Because I really should be able to do that. And maybe check it by a friend. Check your motives with God. Ask Him to show you if you've got something bad going on. But then don't over second guess yourself. It's something I think I've had to learn in parenting is I tend to like to make people feel happy. And if my kids are feeling unhappy, I will immediately conclude that I made the wrong parental decision. But you can't go that way around. You have to take your best shot, do your best, try to make sure your motives are where they ought to be, and then just go forward.
That's the secret to our success. She likes to make people happy. Where's the line between paying attention and stalking?
Is it making you feel uncomfortable? Does communicating that it is making you feel uncomfortable have an effect? I'd say that's, to me, the most obvious line. Communicate it. If I'm a little overwhelmed, a little like, oh my goodness, you're here every time I turn around, tell them, this is too much. Back off.
Yeah, and if you're the one who's paying attention, recognize that that's another person. And your tendency to want to make them just an extension of yourself is actually a damaging thing. You shouldn't do that. So there we go. We got the man-woman perspective on that one. We'll figure this out eventually.
That's all we got.
All right.
Hand raising.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.